All right. Thank you very much, Doc. I've been trying to fiddle with my devices to see if my presentation is going. I can see it on my other device, but I can't see if I can go through my slides. I would have liked to go through my slides and to speak to your class. Good evening, class. I haven't been told
Good evening,
what
sir.
class you are. Oh, thank you. I haven't been told what class you are, but I've been given an instruction to come and speak to you on the landscape of industrial relations in Botswana. Mhm. All right. Thank you very much, Doc. Um, where we address each other as comrades, as we are comrades, because we live in a world where we have to form a relationship as workers first. Now, my name, as it has been said, is Comrade Onyebo Mafoko. I am the Deputy Secretary General of a union called Botswana Land Board Local Authorities and Health Workers Union. And I happen to represent country Botswana at the international stage, at the Public Service International as a titular. So that is me in this landscape of industrial relations. Now, what is industrial relations, at least from my views? Industrial relations, I take it to be a relationship between workers, trade unions, employers, and the government. So, workers are represented by trade unions, at least in the laws of Botswana. The trade unions are appointed or appointees of workers. Now, the employers are your different employers in the country. Like there will be the government or the public service employer, represented by the DPSM, Directorate of Public Service Management, and parastatals that we all know, and the private sectors. And the government, taking it to the level of the public service and parastatals, is the mandate giver to the employer, being the DPSM and the parastatal boards. Oh, trouble. Okay. Oh, then miss the slideshow is not working for us. Oh, thank you. The interrelations amongst workers, trade unions, and government bodies or employer bodies or employer agencies, usually in our country, looks like a complex one. It has been made or to be a belief that across the world that workers, they are beggars to their employers. But us in the trade union movement, we say we don't have anything to beg from the government. We demand for our rights as we sell the government our labor. The relationship between the trade unions and government in Botswana can be said to be dysfunctional at the moment due to the detrimental role played by the government. The government is known to abuse its powers. The government is known to delay implementation of agreements. And lastly, the government, there is what we call the bargaining council. The government, at least the public service, has refused to resuscitate the bargaining council. We will know what the bargaining council is as we move on. But let's look at this. There are principal legal documents which regulate the industrial relations in our country. You'll know of the Employment Act, which is the chief uh, legal document that guides employment in the country. The Employment Act regulates all employees, all workers in this country, be it private sector, parastatal, or the public service. It is the mother of all acts that guide labor. We have what you call Trade Union and Employers Organizational Act. It has to be noted that in all employee relations or in all conditions where you find an employer and employee, there is need to have established trade union in the country. Now, the Trade Union and Employers Organizational Act is what guides the introduction of trade unions in the workplace, how they are guided, how they are established, and how they have their relationship with the employer. Then we have what we call the Trade Dispute Act. The Trade Dispute Act has foreseen that between the employer and the employees, there will always be disputes that will arise. And this act sees to it how do we resolve these disputes. Comrades, you have to note that in no way there is no employer who likes his employees. What the employer wants is to get the most out of their employees. When you reach your expiry date, they let you go home. Your expiry date is your retirement age. And then there is the Public Service Act. The Public Service Act is the act that has been made to guide in the public service arena. Now, we have what we call the Department of Labor, where he's the chief mediator in the industrial relations issues. And then we have the Industrial Court. The Industrial Court is our first court where you go after your labor issues have been mediated, after you agree or do not agree on settling a matter. Then you have your High Court and your Court of Appeals. You do not have a Court of Appeal for industrial relations issues. So all our industrial issues after the Industrial Court, they go to the Court of Appeal. We have the Employment and Trade Dispute Act are currently under review in the country Botswana. You remember that after 2011 strike, what the unions did in the country is that they took the country or the employer to ILO and reported that the Labor Relations Act or the labor laws in Botswana are non-functional. They give the employer too much power. So now we are under review of the Employment Act and the Trade Dispute Act. I think that is the basis of the legal documents that guide or regulate relationship of employees and employers in the country. Now, like I said, the industrial relations in our country is very much troubled. What is the background of it? It is empirical for us all to note that the state plays a bigger role in industrial relations as an institution, and it sets a framework for all labor laws as the main custodian who holds a larger share with regards to employment in the country. I don't know where you were during 2011 or how old we were, but we'll remember that the country Botswana had its biggest industrial action 2011. The president then was His Excellency Dr. Seradzakama Ian Kama, the Lieutenant General, together with his cabinet then, they made sure that the workers can go on strike for 2 years, but we will never listen to them. That is why we say the state plays an imperative role. But today, everything has changed. You'll be the judges of whether it has changed to be good or bad. Yesterday, while we were addressing workers at Mahalabe, workers asked us as the leaders, why did we say ka 2011 that we hate karma? But today, when matters do not go our way, we do not say we hate masses. I want to use those two references to show that the power of every industrial relations lies with the state. The state of industrial relations remain unruly despite the existence of the Department of Labor, which is meant to mediate between the trade unions and the employers. The 2011 historic and massive public service strike was a litmus test to the public service that shaped and defined the nature of the relationship that exists between employer, employees, government, and the trade unions. Workers in the public service demanded an increment of 16%, and the employer offered 0%. Negotiations at that time hit a deadlock, and ultimately workers declared a dispute which was not resolved at mediation level. In Botswana, there are laws that guide what needs to be done after negotiations, after mediation, and to go to industrial action. Those laws are clear. Much has been said about the 2011 strike, which we believe that they have tainted the industrial relations in our country even today. It lives to haunt us even today. Whatever happens today, everyone has to remember of the 2011 strike. Botswana is believed, or we perceive it as a capitalist country. Hence, we believe it serves the interest of capital while systematically and deliberately suppresses the demands of the workers. If we take a life example now, in the public service, we have seen during the December Parliament or the November Parliament, the Minister of Presidential Affairs bringing to Parliament papers or bills that made and led to the escalation of or increment of salaries of members of Parliament and senior government officials' wages by others 22%, others 40%. While at the moment, the public service only get 5% increment. So this is what shows us that everything is skewed to the few who continue to get or become richer and richer and making the poor worker to remain poor. In 2011, the government undermined trade unions' fundamental rights to strike and to organize peaceful protest. The government intimidated workers. The government offered the workers no work, no pay. What kind of government does that to its people? This led to many workers being chased away from their work at that time. Labor laws changing, the government declaring that some workers are specialized workers who cannot go to strike, and some of them losing their wages at the time. Now, what leads to all this, or what guides all this? There is this animal that we call collective bargaining. This animal that we call collective bargaining in the country. But what is collective bargaining? What will be what should be termed collective bargaining? It will mean that negotiations which take place between an employer and a group of employees or one or more employers organizations on one hand and one or more workers organizations on the other. In the case of Botswana, where we have established trade unions, we have trade unions who have been recognized by the government or the employer, sitting on a table as as what we have to note that at a collective bargaining table, the employer and the worker representative are equal. So S and equal. For the purpose of determining the working conditions and terms of employment, all the conditions of employment of workers are set at the collective bargaining table. The collective bargaining process in the Public Service Act become or it has been made a law, but the collective bargaining process, it is more defined in the public service in Botswana, and other people construe that it only exists there, but that is not the truth. As the trade unions in Botswana have now expanded to get into the private sector, the parastatal, the bargaining or collective bargaining has started there. You'll remember that last year, 2023, there was massive collective bargaining at the University of Botswana, where a few University of Botswana trade unions demanded more, and this led to the industrial strike that at least a few of you would have experienced because it was right there. I'm not sure my friend Chris participated in that strike. Full collective bargaining in the public service or the public sector takes place following the enactment of the Public Service Act 30 of 2008. You will remember that during the establishment of the trade unions before independence, it only happened that at around 2008, all the associations that were formed, my union was formed in 1972, and it was an association. There was no worker who was allowed to be a trade union. No one was allowed to trade unionize, and everyone was supposed to convene under association. Only one union in Botswana, let's not distort history, only one union in Botswana was, or only one organization was unionized at that time. This was the Manual Workers Union. The laws in the country only allowed for industrial workers to unionize. It was believed that every other person cannot unionize, but only the industrial workers. So at that time, or up until 2008, that's when the labor laws changed in the country, and all associations that were formed converted to being trade unions. So all these trade unions that you see started being in 2008. That's when collective bargaining in the country started. But in Botswana, we see that there is a lot of reluctance to resuscitate the Public Service Bargaining Council by the government. So, collective bargaining, as the Employment Act states, should happen under the bargaining council. At your private sector, at the University of Botswana, at your parastatals, there should be an establishment of what we call a bargaining council. A bargaining council is a tool where workers and their employer sit on a table, on a round table, and they feel equal at that moment. So, in the country as we see it now, even let me bring in the politics behind bargaining. We stated earlier on that the state has too much power and control over industrial relations. You remember that in 2019, after President Kama left, the government de-reorganized the Public Service Bargaining Council. But as we were going to elections in the campaigns, the President Massis, campaigned to the public service workers saying that the relations will improve. The first thing that I will do after you vote for me is to establish the bargaining council. 4 years later or 5 years later today, the bargaining council is nowhere to be found. That is a fact. That is the reason why the workers were asking us, what oil has been put on you to make or to stop you from speaking against the government? That's why we have been asked as a trade union leaders. We have been mentioning the Kama name all these years. Why are you not mentioning the Masisi name? We'll talk about the complexities of trade unions and their relationship with government. We have seen in the past when the bargaining council was existing, a lot of people, a lot of parties failed to respect the bargaining council. Even though the bargaining council, when it is established, it sets itself the rules and its constitution is registered with the court that this is the constitution that will guide or run this structure. But the government, as you know it, or the employer, they fail to respect this council. Failure to have full mandate going to the collective bargaining of wages. Now, this has led now, after the destruction of the bargaining council, it has led to all the conditions of service in the public service to be discussed outside the bargaining council. Little can be said about the private sector and the parastatals because none of them have established councils. If you can compare this to our South African brothers, we find that there is a bigger bargaining council where we have the biggest council and we have the subsector councils where subsector issues are discussed, but the national issues are discussed at the bargaining council. The bargaining council becomes the supervisor of this other small council. But the workers always say that we have the power. What is this bargaining power? Bargaining power is relatively the ability of parties in a negotiative situation to exert its influence over each other in order to achieve favorable terms in an agreement. When sitting in any negotiation, this is your ability to exert your power. But where do workers or the other party, where do parties get their power? I would like to focus on the workers. Where do workers get their power? The power is derived from various factors such as each party's alternative to the current deal. But what will be an alternative to negotiation to workers? It is the right to withdraw their labor. The value of what is being negotiated and the urgency of revealing such an agreement is one of the powers. Take for an example, this is a nice topic because this year we are going for elections as a country, and the public service, as they go through the negotiations, they feel that they have power. Now they believe that what is put on the table, they can determine how urgent it is for them to take and how urgent is for them to say yes to anything that is put on the table, because they know that ultimately there is a bigger prize. The person that I'm negotiating with this year, they have to come and negotiate with me for a vote. Now, the workers have power of control. They can use their power to give a vote or to deny it. You remember that in 2019, they used their power, the workers, to control the elections how they went, because they were told or they were promised, they voted as such. But we have to see how everything will go this year. Bargaining power can significantly shift at any time or shift the outcome of negotiations, leading to more advantageous positions for those who possess greater leverage. Based Starting this month of April, the public service started negotiations. Our negotiations are hosted Komahalat. We are negotiating a deal that was agreed in 2022. The deal had a window that in 2024, for the year 2024-2025 financial year, we will have to have this 5% and renegotiate looking at how the economy has performed. Now we went to Mahalabi, we started negotiating. We put our demands on the table. The government counter offered. The employees offered or demanded 15%. The government offered zero. This is where we are. Because of that, we have agreed to go back to our mandate givers. The government mandate giver or the employer's mandate giver is the cabinet, the chief of that being the president. The employees' mandate giver or the trade union's mandate giver is the worker. In the past 5 days, we have held 5 times 5 meetings across the country. The power of the trade unions. The trade unions divided themselves into five. Every day they held 5 meetings in different cities of this country. Yesterday was the 5th day, so we covered 25 places. And the resolution is one, that go back to the bargaining table, use your power. We are here, we are ready. The trade unions say, but there's what we call no work, no pay. They say, bring it on. No pay, no vote. A party's bargaining power can significantly shift the outcome of negotiations, leading to more advantageous positions. Now, how do you shift that? Let me take the example of the public service, what we intend to do now. The only thing that the public service trade unions can do is for before the 8th of May, when they go for negotiations, return leg of negotiations, they should just hold one press conference, call all the press, all the president of the unions, they sit on that table and they tell the workers that please go register and vote. We are going to the bargaining table. There is no politician who wouldn't want to buy a vote. Why is the landscape of the public service or the trade or the industrial relations in Botswana this tainted? It is because that the government, being the chief policymaker, the government and its policies, they do not believe that injecting money into workers is igniting the economy. This morning, the director of GPSM was at one radio station. She said the government is injecting or fueling the economy by your chairman's, your which has failed this Mali, your everything. Then we asked, what about the public service workers? What about your workers? So, critical to this issue is about policy making in our government. If we can have policy shift, this is what can drive the industrial relations to be clean in our country. If the government or the state has an interest in changing a lot of things, they can make proper policies, knowing that if we do one, this is how we can ignite our economy. But in conclusion, we say that sound industrial relations is only achievable through constructive and genuine social dialogue. In all this, I have been talking to social dialogue, which has three poles: the worker, the employer, and the government. But the bargaining council serves as a legal structure and the most effective structure where wages and conditions of service of employees are negotiated, taking into consideration many factors such as inflation rate and the growth of the economy. I would like to pause there and end my preaching to yourselves. Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you very much, class.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mafoko. That was a very beautiful presentation. They are even clapping for you. Yeah. So now the floor is open. Please ask all your questions today because this man is difficult to find. So ask all your questions, all the difficult questions. I told you that I don't understand the dynamics of industrial relations in Botswana. For theories, I can. Yeah, I think Tumelo is here. Tumelo, please go ahead and ask the question.
Yes, is Mr. Mafuka going to share the presentation with us?
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So it will be shared.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So please ask question because when he leave, it will take a very long time before we find him again.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, what was the role of trade unions and trade unions during the COVID pandemic or in industrial
Oh, in
relations
Botswana, right?
in Botswana? Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mafoko. They want to know what the trade unions did during the COVID-19. That period. Yeah.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. I guess the question was from Lopang. Thank you very much, Comrade Lopang. During the COVID-19 era, when the COVID-19 started, uh, the trade unions in December 2019 approached the government. We made a position paper as trade unions, at least as from the federation side. We informed the government that we hear reports that there is this coming. The government at the time, they just brushed off. The government just brushed off our issue. Then, what were we positioning? After the trade unions saw what happened in China, the trade unions sat down and said, we should prepare well because the health workers need to be taken care of. The first interest of the trade union was for taking care of the workers because they, after the reports that came, they wanted to stop the death of or the loss of health workers to this COVID-19. But in 2020, when everything started to open up and the government started talking about COVID-19, now that is when the government started bringing in the trade union to the table. Their only interest, the government was, let's stop the negotiated salary increments that were agreed on April 2019. Let's defer them. It is very difficult to defer somebody's salary. So we nearly had a fight. I remember my union took the government to court, while every other person has given up. We took the government to court and saying that no implementation of our collective labor agreement. Then that is when the government started taking seriously of trade unions. We had to give the government ideas on how to take care of workers first. Then we went to how to protect the economy of the country. We agreed on how to distribute the reliefs that the government planned for across the country because we had to use workers. The plan was made by the trade unions. We offered the government and said, you know what, the workers will help to distribute the reliefs across the country. The workers will help to do massive contact tracing because everyone was afraid, worrying, how can a health worker be expected to go on contact tracing and contacting this COVID-19? So our role was to take our members or to take the workers, put them to various counseling sessions and make them to be free in doing their work. We believe that during that time, we played a bigger role to this country's economy. Then lastly, we had this idea to the government, preparedness to national disasters. So we made a position paper that has never been published by the government because we put it to the government. We jointly with the Public Service International, is this an international organization? We designed a good paper to the government and said the preparedness of the government in national disasters, a very case study of how workers can assist. That is our role, Lopa. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that was a powerful answer. And thank you very much for enlightening all of us. I think we have another hand. Yes, please go ahead.
Say, Mr. Mafuko, the world is moving into just a transition. I want to understand the position of unions in Botswana in that regard. What are you doing that is moving into that direction?
Am I going to take only one question or a few of them, then I answer collectively?
Okay, which one do you want?
Maybe
Do you
my
want a
proposal
collective
is
or
that
you
maybe we
just
can have 3 questions, then we
then you answer? Okay, thank you
at
very much.
once.
So
Is that fine
then,
with you?
yes, it's fine with me. Then Kaleto, please go ahead.
Fine with us. Yes, let me ask a second question. My question is that, do you think the Botswana society is ever going to come together during times of strike? Because I think majority of Botswana are, for lack of a better word, I would say timid. They're not interested in strikes. Because obviously after the 2011 strikes, they if you go to strike, obviously going to lose your job. As trade unions, what do you do to assure Botswana hore once it comes to the point where we have to go to a strike, how are they going to protect us? And that fear that we experienced in 2011, is it still there? That's my question.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Let's Lami, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mafoko, I wanted to know, with the fourth industrial revolution becoming a thing in our country, how better prepared are you as unionists in protecting the rights of employees? Because clearly times are looming and there'll be a possibility or a time when technology is doing the work that traditionally was done by normal people.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mafoko, please take over. Comrade.
All right. All right. The first question was the one about just transition. It, we admit to the development or the new development of the shifting in the world stage. But the union has moved swiftly to secure the workers' rights at this time. We admit that we have a lot of shifts, the economic shifts, but we know that people prioritize or companies prioritize easy production versus having too much labor on their side. As the trade union in shifting, we are promoting sustainable education or sustainable production education to our workers. We talk much about the combating climate change and protecting diversity. These are the lessons that we give to our members. I happen to be, because I have an environmental science background. In fact, not the background. I'm a product of environmental science from the University of Botswana. My role in the trade union, at least international, in the public service international, is to do much research on climate change and how the trade unions and workers can live with with it. So this it is a visionary idea of the trade unions to try to be a step ahead, or at least at the level of where the world is going. Our principles, we preach much about the principles uh, that aims to creating environmental sustainable economies in our world, because we don't not want the trade union movement to be left behind and only think of the past, that no, we used to operate all the machines. I think it goes with Lame's contribution, where we talked about the fourth industrial revolution. We admit as the trade union, and what we're saying is that we, as the employers, have, as we bring in technology to replace workers, we have to know that this technology should be operated by workers. But the intelligence of the technology can not outsmart the smartness of the workers. But for this, in the fourth industrial revolution, at least in Botswana, we still know that we might be lagging behind, but internationally, we can see that many people are losing their jobs to the technology. But what we are doing, even internationally, as the trade union in Botswana is not in isolation. We live in the world. So we are learning from the best. We are learning from the world how they do their things, and we prepare well and prepare our members that as technology comes, let's beat this technology, let's learn the technology so that we operate this technology. And maybe lastly, back when I was talking about how do you use your power, how do you make sure that your power that you talk of, your bargaining power that you talk of mostly, how do you make sure that people do not have fear in exercising their power? Actually, it is the truth. Yesterday, when we were addressing Mahala Bay, after people agreed that no, tell the government that we are going on strike, one person stood up and he said, no, no, I'm not going on strike. Out. Do you know what out is? A 00 in your pay slip. Then the union is prepared. The union is prepared. After 2011 strike, after a lot of casualties, what we did, the union in Botswana started what we call a strike fund. I'm not going to say how much the strike fund is, but test us. We can collapse your economy and the workers continue getting their salaries the way they can get their salaries. That is the bargaining power that we wield, at least today. The fear that people have, we know that as much as we go around the country talking to the workers, making sure that everyone knows that we have the backup. We know that we can demand more. If we lose the less, but eventually we'll get more. It is about educating our members that we are not doing this for today. We are doing this to correct the industrial relations in the country. Our members now understand that for a very long time we have been listening to people talking and talking and talking. But now, because it is said that we have the power, let's show people our power. It's not only that we can only go to strike, there are a lot of ways that we are going to make sure that just this year it is believed, at least as our members say, they say it is a very productive year to us. You will hear media papers saying that the workers say they are not going with any political party. Beware of that. They will not tell you the truth. You will see the truth this year. You will see them acting, the workers, because they want, if they are selfish. They said, at least in all corners of the country where we have addressed, they said today, this year is all about us, the workers. We'll show the world our power. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for addressing the questions in a very good way. I think, do we still have questions? Okay, whilst we wait for questions, let me ask this. So, in general, in summary, do you think in the light of these challenges, do you think the industrial, like the trade unions in Botswana, they are really doing well? How do you see the future of trade unions in Botswana?
Oh, thank you very much. When you started here, I said we have managed to get a victory. At least it is a victory for the workers and the employer. The Employment Act or the Labor Acts in Botswana are being reviewed. At least they are at a final stage. The pieces that have been reviewed, that is the greatest victory to workers in this country. The future of trade unions in this country, internationally, the numbers of trade unions are going down. But as much people don't join trade unions anymore for the relationship industrial workers, they join it for the benefits. Now, the trade unions in the country have agreed that let's move out of this being yellow unions. Let's start being what we are. The time of union leadership being captured by the government it is what destroyed the unions, at least reduced the gains of the unions. Now, because the workers now understand that we have to put people that we know exactly will represent us. People in Botswana still understand what a trade union is. The only problem gets where the leaders look for their interest before the interest of the workers. Now, if the unions can continue exerting their force in showing the government that we are for the workers, the future of trade unionism in the country will grow in the next years. I believe the future looks bright. Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And so, if we are not getting any question again, I think we'll call off this class, and we would like to thank Mr. Mafoko. In fact, it has been an insightful presentation, and he has taken us through so many things that personally I didn't know. Especially the reviewing the laws and those things. These are important things. And we would love to see the new ones when they roll them out or when they get ready. So that we see the significant changes that has been made. And we see how these significant changes will go in to help workers in Botswana in general. Thank you very much. And what do I say again? Class, help me to thank Mr. Mafoko for honoring.
That's how you say it.
Okay, I think saying it will be a bit difficult for me. So you say, I think you said it for me, or you can say it for me, please.
Mr. Mafoko, for joining us this evening.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And then bye bye to you all. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.